Here, I've got the perfect heading for you. Stop waiting for perfect. Start rentvesting now. Enter the market now. Live your dream through rentvesting. Buy anything, rent your dream, get started with rentvesting. Own something, rent where you live. That's rentvesting. Can't buy smart, start with rentvesting. You get it, guys? That's what we're going to talk about today. Stay tuned.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Morning Minutes. Myself, Michael Bergio, Mark Novak, episode 1421, talking about rentvesting. I like this topic because this is definitely a newer era topic. If you said to your parents, your grandparents, you're not going to own and pay the mortgage of the house you live in, you're going to be paying someone else's, they would laugh at you and say, don't be silly. No, we're not paying that. But that's not the same of the last few years in particular. There's a phrase for it. And when something's got a phrase like rentvesting, then it's catching on. But let's start with Mark. What is rentvesting and why is it becoming more and more popular?
You remain as a tenant and you buy something, anything to get into the property market, and then you put a tenant into that property. So you're the landlord for that property. So you've got into the market.
All right, let's start with, there must be financial benefits to do this. But before we go into financial benefits, what are some benefits of being a tenant where you live compared to being the owner where you live?
Oh, it's fantastic. Maintenance is one of them. Probably the biggest one, I'd say, where you don't have the outgoings, you don't have the strata rates, the water rates, any of that stuff. And you don't have the maintenance of anything goes wrong. You can just pick up the call the agent, get it fixed.
Yeah, the stove breaks.
Huge.
And especially if what you typically see is rentvesting, you're renting a higher premium home than what you may own. So the maintenance could be a lot higher. So to save that cost, because someone may say, well, you've got to do it on your own, but you're typically renting a property at a higher level than what you own. So there's that reason. But there must be a financial consideration and incentive why this is a lot more popular.
Well, I think the biggest problem that I see with people not considering this is they abstain. They wait and they wait and they wait until they can buy the perfect property, and it's like property values are going up and up and up, and if it's costing you more to buy that property, you're just losing money. So if you get in sooner into anything, so if you get into a studio apartment, if you get into a 1-bedroom apartment and you really want to buy a 3-bedroom house, that's cool, but just get into that 1-bedroom or studio and don't wait.
Yeah, and I think here are the numbers, and I remember with my apartment. So you're looking at the mortgage worked out, let's say mortgage, strata, council, everything worked out to be about $1,400 a week, but it was only leasing for $550 per week. So that's an example where to buy that property, but then I could go, well, what could I rent for $1,400 a week? And that can take you to basically a beachside property. So you can see, especially with interest rates now, back up to that 5, 6, 7%.
Yeah,
this is a lot more impactful. A few years ago, when people were getting 1.9, 1.8% loans, there wasn't as big of a distribution between the rental market and the land tax market. And I think you hit on something perfect, which a lot of people look past. If they can't buy what they want, as you said, they save. But just because you don't want that type of property doesn't mean it doesn't still have property growth. If you look at, let's take DY for example, let's say units have gone up 10%. That's all units, studios, 1 bedrooms, two
Yeah.
bedrooms. They want to
People find it
buy.
hard to believe.
I know. So you may want to buy a 2 bedroom home, but let's
Yeah.
say you've got the ability to buy a $500,000 property and you've got 50 grand savings. Now
Yep.
you may be able to save 10% additional, so 50 grand a year. That's an extra $5,000 a year. But if you can buy a $500,000 studio apartment that goes up 10% a year, you're now earning an extra $50,000 a year. And what's
Yep.
going to get you to that 2 bedroom faster? Saving 5 grand cash or getting 50 grand equity
Capital
per year.
growth. Yep. Spot on. Spot on. And it's pretty hard for people to fathom that. They're like, nah, mate, I would never buy a 1 bedroom unit, or I'd never buy a studio. But the cold hard facts are, if you get in, guys, as a rent vestor, and I speak with people, mature age people, the 50s, 60s, 40s, smart, and they're going, you know what? Yeah, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm like, hang on a sec. Just, you got to do the maths. Like, even if they're helping their kids, I'm saying your kid's not going to pay 30 grand in stamp duty.
Mm,
So I know you want your kid to live in a 2 bedroom unit that's 950 grand or $1 million in DY, but get them into something sub 8 and just get them to rent it out. And then that dream later, you can always sell that asset later that you've rent vested, so you can have it for 5 years and then sell it and buy exactly what you want, because there's your savings plus the capital growth you had in 5 years, rather than just your savings over 5 years. Rent vesting, rent vesting, rent vesting. It is good.
yeah. And I think I forgot the other point I was going to say. But yeah, that no, that virtually covers it. And I think even if you've got this is what it was. A lot of people when you're trying to do your first homeowners, you've got to live in it for 6 months. Now you've got to do those figures.
Yes, yes.
So let's say, and only out of 10 purchases, only 10% are first homeowners. So are first time buyers, if that. So most of you, this is going to apply to. But for the people who are your first home buyers, where you've got to live in it for 6 months, then your goal is to own property for 5, 10, 20, 30 years. What's 6 months if you have to live in it? Or if you just sacrifice and pay the stamp duty because you're buying something for 500 grand, let's say stamp duty is 12 grand. Are you going to get more than 12 grand in rental income that could compensate for it? So
Well,
what's your thought?
I'll see some people even just leave it vacant, but shouldn't do that.
Mm,
But the 6 month thing also is a little bit of a myth, because it's showing a clear intention, a reasonable effort to live in the property. It's within a 12-month period. So yes, you can actually, first home buyer can actually buy that rent vest and not have to go into it for 12 months. They can leave a tenant in there for 12 months, the first 12 months. When they do go in, that period you're talking about, if they move in and after a month they are financially unfit, there's a change with work or something, they can move out, but they had a clear intention. So, I know people always say first home buyers are going to be in there for 6 months. It's actually not a figure if you research it with the government. It's showing reasonable effort, and that's deemed as, yeah, sure, 6 months is probably reasonable. But if you're in there for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and you just can't afford it, and there's a change, that's fine.
yeah. And I think where this rent vesting could be very, very helpful is for families who may have that 2 bedroom apartment and they need that house. And it's a big step
Yeah.
up property purchase wise and mortgage wise, where you may have 10 years ago bought a 2 bedroom unit for, say, 600 grand. It's worth 1.5 now, but the house you need is 3 million. Like we'll talk about the other day, just like knockdown in Freshwater was at like $3 million. So to be
Yeah,
buying,
well, I can't believe that. I can't believe that if you want a little house in Freshwater, I think we worked out what the mortgage would be, and it was just scary to entry level house in a suburb like that. I even looked at
when
the Marrickville. I saw something sold in Marrickville for 3.1 million, a little cottage, and I'm thinking, like, that's a hell of a lot of money at 6% interest rates.
Yeah, like, and that's probably just paying interest. So let's go 4 million
It
bucks.
was
4 million. Let's do it at 8%. Principal and interest, 8%. That's $320,000 a year you're paying. So that's divided by 52 is $6,000 a week. Now to rent that house, you're talking $2,000 a week, if that.
Yeah, if that.
If that. So you
If
can
that.
get. So that's a big one.
That's a good one. So buy a 1, 2, 3 bedroom unit, rent it out, go and rent your house in Marrickville, and live there. At least you've put your foot in the door for the property market.
Let's do it.
That's
I'm
our
going to bring
message.
it up.
That's our message today.
Look at this. So $2,600 a week. Freshwater. A monster. Yeah.
She's a mansion.
There's your floor plan. Oh, that way.
What street's that?
That is 91 Harbour Road.
Wow.
But $6,000 a week mortgage. There you go.
Well, that's right.
Be on the water, $1,300 or a $6,000 mortgage.
So the message today is just get in there, guys. Just get in there. Rentvesting is a big thing at the moment. We're seeing a lot of people do it at the moment. And still, even if you're in that first home buyer category, you can actually still get your grant, your no stamp duty paid, whilst living in that property for $1,300, whatever. Rentvest it.
Yep.
And talk to your real estate agent about do some really good research on, or talk to your real estate agent about the grants, because there's some serious grants out there for first home buyers that include, you can use your super as a first home buyer to buy your first home. People don't know. There's you can save tax to save a deposit, then use your super as a first home buyer. There's no stamp duty under 30 grand. There's saving ones where for 2.5% you can actually, or 5%, you can buy a property deposit and you don't have to pay LMI. There's about 5 different grants for first home buyers, not just one.
And just quickly, things to consider for Rentvesting is, what can you buy today? So you need to go to a broker. What can you buy today? And then look at the repayments on that principal and interest repayments, and then go see what you can rent for that. And then, just to show you how better off you are, the property that you can rent for the equivalent of your mortgage, go see what that mortgage is and what that is worth. If you go get those 4 figures, you'll have a good idea if this is right for you.
I'm a dog with a bone with helping people get finance as well. So if you think you can't do it and you can't get into the market, call me. Call Burge. Call me.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Burgio. See you. Bye.